أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وحجج الله على أهل الدنيا والآخرة والأولى ورحمة الله وبركاته. So this line actually gets us to the end of the second section. If we take each section to be ending in wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, this now brings us to the end of the second section. Here we are saying to Ahlul Bayt, and we are saying to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, Wahujajillah, Assalamu ala Hujjajillah. Salam to you, O Hujjaj of Allah. What is Hujjaj? Hujjaj is the plural of Hujjah or Hujjat. Hujjat itself means proof or decisive argument. We'll go into this in more detail. So when we say you are the Hujjatullah, you are the Hujjats of Allah, you are the proofs which have been appointed by God Himself. Ala Ahlidunya, you are the proofs upon whom? Upon the people of the world. Ad-dunya. Ad-dunya is the feminine version of the word adna, which is known technically as ism tafzil, which gives the meaning of, like for example, in English, we add er to a word. So we want to say, for example, bigger, smaller, shorter, faster, slower, thinner, larger, broader. All of these things, when we want to make a comparison between two things, we add er typically in English, cheaper, dearer, all of these kinds of words. This is called ism tafzil in Arabic. So dunya is the feminine version of adna. Adna itself means either it comes from danaya or danawa, which means close with lowness. So closer with a degree of lowness. Now let me explain a bit more. Dunya, the philosophers of Islam have divided this world of existence into four. So if we go from the highest level to the lowest level, there are four levels. There is Lahut, Jabarut, Malakut, Nasut. Nasut is also known as Dunya, and it is the lowest level of existence. What is below Nasut or Dunya? There's nothing. It's non-existence. So this is the lowest level of existence. This is the Dunya. It is also, lowest, yeah? That's one of the meanings of Dunya, low. It is also the closest to humans. Why? Because it's a material world, so everyone can feel it and sense it. The other realms are not open and not able to be sensed by everyone. For example, right now, most of us, we don't have a feeling and a sense of barzakh and akhirat. We don't have that sense. But dunya, everyone can feel and sense because it is the most simple. It is the one that is open to the most, for example, sensory perception of ours. So it is both close to us and low, hence dunya. Wal akhirah, and the people of the hereafter as well. So you, Imams of Ahlul Bayt, are the Hujjatullah, are the proofs of God upon even the people of the akhirah. This is the feminine version of akhir, from akhara, which means after, because it comes after the dunya, hence it's called akhirah. Wal ula, which is the feminine version of awwal. Awwal means the first, something which begins and then there's a sequence which comes after it. So you are the proofs of God upon dunya, akhirah, and ula. What is ula? If we've said dunya and akhirah, then what is ula? Ula, there are a few different possibilities. Number one, it could be alam-e-zar. Before this world, we were in alam-e-zar. I won't go into the details of that, but maybe it refers to alam-e-zar. Number two, it could refer to barzakh. So dunya, akhirat, and barzakh in the middle. Number three, it could refer to previous generations. In other words, you are the hujjats, not only of this time in which you were born, you are hujjats also for the previous generations, when maybe even you were not born or physically there, but we've discussed this in previous sessions. You were still the hujjats and the binding proofs of God upon those people as well. A question arises in Arabic, why is this in feminine form? Why do we say dunya feminine, akhirah feminine, ula feminine? Why? Well, this is probably because these are sifat, these are descriptors for a mawsoof, for something which is hidden or deleted. This happens in Arabic, this is quite normal. Most likely we are saying an-nash'a, the world or the genesis. So an-nash'atil dunya, an-nash'atul akhirah, an-nash'atul ula. That's just a technical point. We don't have to spend too much time on it. So now, when we say hujjat, what do we mean by this term? What is a hujjat? Hujjat is basically that which, in a dispute between two parties, the two parties bring their hujjat to prove their side or their point. They raise that hujjat, proof or evidence, and they argue on its basis. So in an intellectual debate, when you want to debate an idea, each side will use their own proofs or arguments to prove their point. That is their hujjat. In a physical issue, like a crime has been committed. Each side will raise its proofs and evidence to show either guilt or innocence. Those points are their hujjat, their arguments, their proofs. Very importantly, in Islam, hujjat is used to nullify an excuse. For example, right now, do we have an excuse if we say, for example, I missed my prayer? Allah will say, why did you miss your prayer? Do you have any excuse? Can you say you didn't know? Can you say you were not aware? Can you say that you had no idea there was a thing called prayer? Can you say, for example, no one guided you? Can you say, for example, you didn't know the laws? If you have an excuse, that's a different matter. But you don't have an excuse. When you know, when you have been taught, when you have been trained, when you have been guided, you're supposed to pray. So it's to nullify an excuse. Or it can also be used to justify an action. Allah comes and says, why did you pray Salatul Layl? We'll say, well, Amirul Mu'mineen was our Imam and he was famous for Salatul Layl. Imam Zain al-Abidin was our Imam and he was famous for Salatul Layl. Rasulullah was our prophet and everything he did, you told us in the Quran that copy my prophet, he's the uswatun hasana, he's the best example for you. وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever he brings to you, take it. Whatever he tells you not to do, don't take it. You told us all these things and he prayed namaz-e-shab and Salatul Layl, so we prayed it. So it's either used to justify an action or to nullify an excuse. So Allah can use hujjat upon us. We can also use hujjat upon to justify ourselves. So Allah can say to us, I gave you a brain, I gave you a mind, I gave you thinking, I gave you free will. You didn't have to do all of these things. Why did you commit these crimes? So he has a hujjat over us. We have a hujjat in front of him if we have a good excuse for why we did certain things. For example, a mujtahid, he seeks a hujjat in his work. In the Shia faith, we have a mujtahid who does ijtihad in the religious sciences to extract a law of Islam. He needs a hujjat. Aghay Fulani, why did you say this is wajib? This is his hujjat. He said, I have a proof. This hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam proves that this is wajib. Why did you say this is haram? This hadith of Imam Baqir alayhi salam proves that this thing is haram. That is my hujjat. So hopefully that makes us understand what is the meaning of hujjat. Now, we have religious hujjats. What are the religious hujjats? Number one, Quran. Quran, all of it is a hujjat. All of it in its right context, understood in the right way, is a hujjat for us. Number two, ma'asumeen. All of them are a hujjat for us. All of them, especially in fiqh, for example, this is an interesting point. In fiqh, the sunnat of the ma'asumeen is a hujjat for us. So if a ma'asum does something, then we can understand that that is a good thing to do. If a ma'asum says something, then we can take his words as hujjat and we can base our life upon those words. Number three, if an action is done in the presence of a ma'asum and they didn't prohibit it, so it was done in their presence and there was no other external factor and they didn't prohibit it, then we know that that is okay to do. We know it's not haram, because had it been haram, it would have been wajib upon them in most cases to tell that person that don't do this, this is not a good thing. So ma'asumeen are hujjat. So Quran and ma'asumeen. So on the day of judgment, Allah will be able to have a hujjat on all of us through his book and through his imams and anbiya, the prophets and the imams. People will be able to say to Allah, I did this because of your book told me, your imam told me, your hujjat told me, your nabi told me, your rasul told me. I have a hujjat. I have a reason to do this. For this reason or that reason, that is why I did this thing. In the world, there are also hujjats in the world in the sense that they give us a decisive argument. Is avoiding sins possible? Let's say someone comes along and says, don't bother avoiding sins. It's not possible. Why are you putting yourself under this much pressure to avoid sins? We'll say, no. Amirul Mu'mineen avoided sins. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam avoided sins. Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam avoided sins. We know it's possible. We will try. They come along and they'll say, forget shaitan. He's too powerful. He will overpower you. There's no way to repel him. We'll say, no. Our imam showed us that it's possible to repel shaitan. They will come and they'll say to us, for example, that this bala and this world and the trials and tribulations of this world, for example, what's happening right now in Palestine, may Allah rescue them and crush the oppressors and bring an end to the oppression. It is not possible to have sabr upon bala. It is not possible to have patience and perseverance upon bad things that happen. We'll say, no, look at Karbala. Imam Hussein had it. He proved to us that it's possible. So they prove to us that certain things are possible. So there are hujjats upon us in that sense as well. Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj Balagha, Sermon 176, he has a beautiful expression here. He says, Al-amala al-amal, action, action, thumma nihaya al-nihaya. Then the end, wal istiqama al-istiqama. Remain steadfast, remain steadfast. Thumma sabr as-sabr. Thereafter, endure, endure. Wal wara al-wara. Piety, piety. You have an objective. Proceed towards your objective. You have a sign. Take guidance from your sign. Islam has an objective. Proceed towards its objective. Proceed towards Allah by fulfilling his rights which he has enjoined upon you. He has clearly stated his demands for you. In other words, Imam is trying to say, everything is clear for you. He has done his hujjat upon you. And then Imam says this, Ana shahidun lakum, I am a witness for you. Wa hajijun yawm al-qiyamati ankum, and I shall plead excuses on your behalf on the day of judgment. In other words, I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you as your hujjat as well. Let me bring a few ahadith which Al-Jawadi mentions. First hadith from the Holy Prophet himself, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He says, Ana wa Aliyun wa Fatima wal Hassan wal Hussein wa tis'atun min wuldil Hussein hujjajullahi ala khalqih. Me and Ali alayhi salam and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein and the 9 offspring from the lineage of Hussein are all the hujjats of Allah upon his creation. A'da'una a'da'ullah. So our enemies are also the enemies of God. In other words, if we are here representing God as his decisive arguments and his proofs, then anyone who stands against us has stood against God himself. Wa awliya'una awliya'ullah. And anyone who is our friend is also the friend of God, because we are representing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another one, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Ana hujjatullah, I am the proof of God. Ana al-hujjatul uzma, I am the greatest proof of God, no doubt. Here then we have another one from Imam Ali ibn Musa Redha alayhi salam. Abbas narrates that Imam Redha alayhi salam, when he met people, he used to speak to them in their language, and he was the most knowledgeable and most eloquent. One day I said to him, O son of the Prophet, I am amazed that you know all of these different languages with all of their differences and all of their grammatical differences and all of their language and vocabulary differences. You know all of them. He said, O Abbas, I am indeed the hujjat of Allah upon his servants. If I was to not know the language of those servants, how could I be the hujjat of Allah? Ya Abbas Salt, ana hujjat Allahi ala khalqi wa ma kana liyattakhidha hujjatan ala qawmin wa huwa la ya'rifu lughatahum. In another one, towards the end of the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa Redha alayhi salam, Abbas says, Imam was inside a room, the doors were shut, the doors were locked, I stood guard. Then I noticed that there was a young boy at the side of Imam Redha alayhi salam. I asked him, how on earth are you here? How did you enter into this place when the doors are shut and locked? And he replied to me, Ana hujjatullahi alayk. I am the proof of God. I am the decisive argument of God upon you. In other words, I am the next Imam. So the point here is that a hujjat of God has to know all the languages because he is the decisive argument of Allah. He is the proof of God. He has to be able to communicate with people. He cannot say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know your language. He has to know all the languages. And he has to be able to be in places where he is required. Otherwise, what kind of hujjat would he be? If he's representing Allah on earth, he'll have to be in different places at different times. Sometimes in the twinkling of an eye, sometimes with a miraculous appearance. Finally, we have this from Agha Jawadi. He brings this wonderful point. He says, now there's another group of hujjat of Allah. Yes, Anbiya are hujjat. A'imma alayhim salam are hujjat. Scholars and ulama are also hujjat. Scholars are also a hujjat. Why? Because Imam Zaman holds them as a proof over us. In other words, we can rely on them. We have an excuse because of them. We can justify our actions because of them. Here I'm talking about the Maraje and Mujtahideen, the very topmost scholars. I'm not talking about all the other lower level scholars necessarily. Why is this? Because he is a proof of Allah over them. They have to represent him, listen to him, and be faithful to him because of his link with Allah. He says, وَأَمَّا الْحَوَادِثُ الْوَاقِعَةِ. As for the issues which come about during my absence, وَأَمَّا الْحَوَادِثُ الْوَاقِعَةِ فَارْجِعُوا فِيهَا. In these situations where you don't know what to do, refer to ruwati hadithina, those who narrate our hadith. In other words, the scholars who are experts in our hadith and narration of hadith. فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ. They are my proof upon you. وَأَنَا حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِمْ. I am the proof of Allah upon them. What they say you have to do because they say what I tell them to do. I am a proof upon them. They are a proof upon you. They are my proof upon you. إِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ. They are my proof upon you. So scholars also come into the same category as hujjat during these days of ghaybat of Imam Zaman Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. I think I'm going to leave it there for today, and next week I'll bring the same line again, Wahujajillahi ala Ahlidunya wal akhirati wal ula, but from the writings of Ayatollah Ziya Abadi, inshallah. So that was our analysis of this line of Ziyarat Jamia. Inshallah, next week we'll continue the same line, but from a different angle, from a different perspective, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.